If you could continue living your life now as you are in your current state of health, how long would you want to live?
My guest today is Dr. Nichola Conlon, a scientist in aging, medicine, cellular aging, longevity, and I'm super excited to have this chat with her today.
In the future, a lot of the things that you're doing today will not be done anymore.
Okay.
Because I think we'll be really focusing on fixing aging on the inside.
Yeah.
There'll be no need to take collagen orally and hope it gets in the skin somehow. We'll give you this injection or whatever it may be, and this is going to switch back on your fibroblasts to produce collagen. If you look at every single disease that we're suffering, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, the biggest risk factor is your age. So actually, is aging the disease?
Yeah.
These processes that keep us young and help us be healthy while we are young actually don't disappear. They just get turned down. If there's one thing you're going to invest in a good NAD supplement. How can we take some of that science and bring it into the aesthetics field in the form of regenerative medicine?
If you are an aesthetic injector, a nurse, a doctor, a dentist, or clinic owner, please sit back and relax. But remember, like every treatment, this podcast comes with a risk. You may end up becoming very successful. So welcome, Dr. Nichola Conlon.
Hello, thank you. I'm so honored to be here chatting with you today.
Pleasure. My first question, what is aging?
Oh, well, that's a great one to start.
You gave me that.
What is aging? I think that's a great question because a huge part of the aesthetics industry is trying to treat aging in some form. But a lot of people, when I speak to them, cannot tell me what aging is. So if I asked you, what is aging, what would you say?
No, you're playing the answer.
What would you say?
Well, I would say that during time or over time, chronologically, our body loses the ability to rebuild certain structures and regenerate and heal broken cells or defend senescent cells. That would be my definition of aging.
And that's good. That's a lot more than I usually get.
Okay.
What I usually get is people go, oh, it's just this thing that happens. It's natural. It's inevitable. There's nothing we can do about it. It's, not really sure why it's happening. Actually, that's a good question. And what we know is, as scientists, is that even ourselves, we didn't really know what was causing aging for a long time. But within the last around decade, we've had some incredible advances where we now understand what is causing the aging process. And when it comes to aging, I think the best way to kind of explain it is to get people to think of it in terms of evolution. Mm-hmm. Okay? So us as humans, we have evolved to only live to around age 40 maximum.
Yeah.
Sort of our purpose is, as crude as it sounds, our body is a shell to protect our DNA, to reproduce, pass on our genes, and that is our job done.
Yeah.
As far as evolution was concerned anyway. And that means that we've evolved to be very good at being young, but not very good at being old. Mm-hmm. Because up until around 200 years ago, we never reached old age.
Yeah.
Yeah. We only lived, if we were lucky, to around age 40. We would die from childbirth, from a tooth abscess, from an infection, something like that.
Yeah.
We were privileged enough to have these long lives. So when evolution was designing our bodies, it designed us to be very good at being young, but not very good at being old. So all of our biology is not designed to help us live into old age. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, it does make sense. All of these processes that keep us good and healthy when we're young seem to start to get turned down as we get older because the body usually simply wouldn't have required them. But I guess the most interesting bit is that these processes that keep us young and help us be healthy while we are young actually don't disappear.
Okay.
They're still there. They just get turned down.
Yeah.
And that's what we as scientists now understand, that we can maybe do something about this.
What I was thinking in preparation of this podcast, does it make sense that we all live longer? Or is that just an egoistic attempt for ourselves? Is it helpful for human if we all live like about 200 or older? because, the planet is already full of people and animals and resources being needed, and we have climate change. And is it, in a broader perspective, a good idea to just get older?
Yeah, I think this is a common misconception about the sort of longevity industry, that we're going to develop some pill that's going to make us all, as you say, live to 200.
Yeah.
But actually a huge amount of what this, field is looking at is actually not how to extend our lives, but how to increase the proportion of our lives that we are healthy.
Yes.
So at the minute, we've already doubled our lifespan in the last 200 years.
Crazy.
That's due to improvements in sanitation, healthcare, things like that. I guess none of us would argue that that was a bad thing to do.
Absolutely.
But when we were doing that, we weren't thinking about the planet, etc. We were thinking about how, improving our lives as humans to live healthier. Now, unfortunately, we're in a situation where we've got this long lifespan of around 80 years, but we don't have what we refer to as the health span to match it. So your lifespan is just the number of years you'll live, but your health span is the proportion of your lifespan that you actually live in good health. And that's the important bit. And that's what a lot of this science and new technologies that are coming out are aiming to do. They're going, okay, we've got a long lifespan now, but how do we increase health span?
Okay. So the aim is to stay fit and vital and independent in some ways until the end of life, right?
Exactly.
Usually the last 20, 15, 8 years of your aging process or towards the end of the end of life are miserable because you live in a elderly home or need someone to take care of you. You're in hospital very often, or you're sitting in the wheelchair, or your brain is not functioning anymore. So that's your aim in this field of science, to prevent that and to just be fit until I'm 85, and then I'm going to bed one day and just don't wake up in the morning. So that would be
that is the general idea. And when you look at the discrepancy at the moment between health span and lifespan, for example, in the UK, for a female, average lifespan is now 83 years, but expected health span is only 63 years. So that's 20 years where you are expected to be outside your health span. And when I say that, I mean suffering from multiple chronic age-related diseases, frailty, all the other things that come along with aging, where you don't have that quality of life, you're not able to live independently. And the idea is to try and decrease that to maybe a couple of years. At the minute, it's nearly 20 for a lot of people. Decrease it to a couple of years. And, a question that I always say was, if you could continue living your life now as you are in your current state of health, how long would you want to live? Because, a lot of people will say, oh, well, I don't want to live longer. I don't want to, be in a care home. I'm not bothered. But actually, if you were 70 and actually were completely fine, full health, traveling the world, doing exactly what you want to do, then that really does change people's perspective on it.
Yeah.
Because, most people would say, okay, well, if that's the case, then yeah, I'm interested. I'm all ears. Like, how can I do that?
And I'm just thinking, how is the brain coping with that? How long is the brain able to have all these cognitive functions and is inspired by the world and the things happening in the world? Or is it the fact that you're healthier for a longer period of time, but you don't cope up with all these new developments and these glasses of Google virtual reality glasses or whatever is coming through AI? Is there any research on that, how the brain is working or psychology is working within this process of aging?
So in terms of health span, a huge part of that goal would be to maintain cognitive function. That is one of the huge things that becomes a problem as we get older. So I think, from the physiological side, maintaining that is a huge priority. And there's a lot of research to show it can actually be done now. But, going back to what you're saying about bucket lists and things like that, I think it's more of a societal shift in thinking. So imagine, I guess, when you were 20, you probably had this vision of okay, there's this set life trajectory that society puts on us, which is, we're born, We then go to school and learn. We then go to work and earn. We then retire and then expire.
Yeah.
You know, once you've retired, okay, you're winding down, that's it. Because that is what we've been brought up to believe is the path of life. But what happens if someone said to you, well, actually, let's completely rethink this path of life, and you're not going to go through that set trajectory. Actually, you know, family, kids, maybe you can have them later in life. You know, maybe that doesn't have to be. You don't have to follow that set route. Maybe you can have multiple careers because, you know, you're going to have long enough to do it. You don't have to do one career.
That would be something for me. That's good, because I have some plans on that.
Yeah, well, usually we say, well, we've got to build our career. You know, we're getting to a particular age. We have to start thinking about pension and retirement, and that's set.
Yeah.
But what happens, you know, how would the 20-year-old you have thought differently, maybe, if you
absolutely
that you didn't have to fit it all into your 20s?
No, you're absolutely right. You know, I'm currently working on another business idea, but you know, I'm 50 now, and I think, okay, for how long do I want to make it? Will I have enough time for all the other things on the bucket list, like traveling and then what else it's on there? But there's a lot of traveling, at least. And so I found myself thinking over really entering this new endeavor, because I don't want to commit to another 20 years. But you're right. If I knew I had like 100 years to go, I would take it on and would love to do it.
But even if you live till, you know, hopefully good age, 80, 90.
Absolutely.
And you live then until then in good health, then, you know, you still...
Absolutely. No, I agree. Absolutely. And then I could do the travelings in the last 20 years. But I know quite a bunch of people say, listen, I'm now going to Australia because I think in 2 years' time I can't do it anymore, right? And they're like 65 or something like that. And that's probably exactly the thing. Yeah. People are afraid they might break their leg or have something, I don't know, whatever happening within these 2 years, and they're not feeling comfortable traveling anymore, flying or taking a plane. And no, I get that.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of evidence when people are retiring, that is when things start to go downhill.
Yeah.
Because, you know, not only are they losing mental stimulation in a lot of people, but also becoming isolated. We know that community and feeling a sense of purpose in your life is a huge part when it comes to healthy longevity. So, there's a lot of different factors at play that could change.
I'll start getting it. No, it's cool. So, you know, we are injectors at this conference, and including me, we treat the outside, and it's very logical that can't be anything, or everything. So there must be something inside which is important to be treated, and that's your part. Mm-hmm. So what is happening when we start treating ourselves from the inside in regards of aging?
Yeah, this has been a really exciting development because, you know, like you say, traditionally we've treated aging at the surface level, and that is just because, you know, there hasn't been another option.
Yeah.
Even when I entered the field of longevity about a decade ago, there were still a lot of scientists within our field that argued whether it was even possible to do anything to aging on the inside. But what we now know, and everyone 100% agrees on, is that everything to do with aging actually starts deep within us, in our cells. So there is not one single part of aging that you can find that doesn't have a cellular origin. Mm-hmm. And after a lot of research, it's been found that there are actually 12 key processes or key things that go wrong in our cells as we get older. And these have been quite famously known as the hallmarks of aging within our field. And the hallmarks of aging, there's a few scientific papers published on it, and that's almost like, you know, the Bible or the guide for this world of longevity, because no matter which parts of aging that you look at, whether that be, you know, skin aging, whether that be cognitive decline, it all comes back to these 12 key cellular processes that seem to be failing. Mm-hmm. So there is a huge push within the longevity scientists to look at how can we actually affect these hallmarks of aging at the cellular level? And if we can do this, is this actually going to have benefits on the outside? Mm-hmm. So everything from, you know, improved skin quality all the way through to better physical function, better cognitive function, reducing the onset of age-related diseases, and also, just generally increasing health span.
And how do you fight these 12 hallmarks of aging?
There's a lot of discussion of the best ways, and there's multiple ways that have been found to actually slow the rate of these hallmarks. So maybe just to give you an example of a couple of different hallmarks of aging and how they work. I guess one of the most famous ones is DNA damage, and that's highly applicable to skin. Because we know that one of the largest causes of skin aging is photoaging from the sun. And that is because the UV light is inducing damage in our cells, it's damaging our DNA. And as we know, DNA is incredibly important for everything in our bodies, including our skin. So what we see is a key failure in the cells as we get older is that our repair of DNA seems to get turned down.
Yeah.
So again, this is like one of these things when we're young, it works really, really well. It's estimated that we get around 10,000 pieces of DNA damage every single day in every single cell. So that's a huge amount. But when we're young, we have this army of cellular repair enzymes that literally go around and repair it.
Fix it.
Before we even know it's become an issue. But these seem to get turned down as we get older. And again, I mentioned turned down, they don't disappear. So a huge push has been, how can we actually reactivate this cellular repair? Because our body is very, very good at keeping us healthy and in good, in good condition. All of these processes, these natural processes, just get turned down. So DNA damage is a big one. Another cellular hallmark is something called senescence, which you did refer to at the start. And senescence is a really interesting one because it's a very key example of something that is very good at protecting us when we're young, but then comes back to bite us when we get older.
Yeah.
So senescent cells are sometimes called in the popular press zombie cells. So what happens is as we accumulate damage in our cells, the body goes, oh my goodness, we can either repair this, or if there's too much damage, the cells are right off, we have to get rid of it. And instead of the cell completely, removing itself and recycling itself and eliminating itself from the body, which takes a lot of effort and energy, what the body does is it just goes, put that cell to sleep. Just put it to sleep, leave it where it is, but just stop it replicating and put it to sleep. That way it can't cause any trouble. So when we're young, that's really good because it's a very quick way. It doesn't take much energy for the body to protect itself from any rogue cells from replicating and becoming cancerous. But now we're living to age 80, we're actually having an accumulation of these cells in the body. So when we were dying, age 40-ish, didn't matter.
Sure.
It never became a problem. But as we're living much longer, we're getting accumulation of these cells in the body. And what we now know is these cells don't sit quietly. They actually secrete a lot of inflammation.
Okay.
And that means that a senescent cell, even if it's in your skin, can be secreting inflammation that's then affecting the rest of your body because that's traveling in the blood and affecting muscle, affecting the brain. So these cells are actually very problematic. The other issue is these cells are sitting there, they're taking up space, but they're not working properly.
How can we remove them?
So drugs are being developed that are actually designed to specifically eliminate them.
Okay.
And these are still very much in the sort of research and development phase, but the preliminary data from looking at it in animal models is incredible. This is, taking an aged mouse, for example, and then giving it a drug to remove these senescent cells. And it's like literally the mouse is young again. Yeah. Running around.
Where can I get this medication?
A lot of people experiment with a lot of they're like, I'll buy these drugs from the laboratories and I'm going to have a go. And, a lot of people are experimenting with these types of drugs, metformin.
I did that, but I did that for a while. Yeah. But I'll tell you what the problem is. Your VO capacity goes down. Yes. And you see that when you do sports. Yes. It's not the same anymore. Yeah. And I was wondering, when I was cycling throughout the Alps, that I couldn't cope up with the colleagues, really was pissed off. And then someone told me it might be all metformin, and I left it. And since then, I'm not a Tour de France cycler, but my my numbers are much better than back then.
Yeah, so these are, drugs that are obviously other indications, but have been found in part to seem to help, influence it.
What about these new ones, which are also made for diabetes, and people take them to lose weight?
Oh, yes.
Is there maybe a good side effect because it regulates your blood sugar? I always have the feeling the blood sugar level could that be a replacement for metformin?
It could be. I guess it doesn't work in the same way in removing senescent cells.
Okay.
But that actually does. The fact that blood sugar can actually cause glycation, which alters the structure of many proteins in the body in an unfavorable way.
And skin,
Yeah, that's another hallmark of aging. So when you look at these, I've just mentioned 3 out of 12. If you look at, DNA damage, senescence, and glycation, those 3 things are huge when it comes to skin aging and skin function and the function of the fibroblasts and the cells that are ultimately, holding all our skin together and producing all the matrix and everything that we need. So as you're getting older, if all of these problems are building up in these cells, then it's going to have a huge impact. So imagine if actually you could just fix even one of those issues. So that's a huge area of interest, and there's many ways I could talk about, but I guess the one that I study a lot and that I find particularly interesting is something called NAD. Mm-hmm. So is that something that you're familiar with? Mm-hmm. Or, yeah.
And it's some kind of supplement you can take, I think.
Yeah, NAD is actually, it's a natural molecule in our body. So it's not something exotic that suddenly we've, developed chemically in a lab. NAD is actually a natural molecule found in all of our cells. It's involved in hundreds of different reactions, but I guess the 2 things it's most famous for are cellular energy production, so producing all the energy that our cells need to work properly, and also repair. Mm-hmm. So as a general rule of thumb, when we have high levels of NAD, we get lots of energy production, and we also get lots of repair going on inside of our cells. If NAD goes low, energy goes down, repair also goes down. So what scientists have found is that our NAD levels seem to decline quite significantly as we get older. So it's estimated that it halves every 20 years, and this is from birth, which is quite worrying because it's so important in our cells that its decline has huge implications in terms of cellular health, because repair's going down, energy production's going down, and all of these beneficial processes are getting switched off, leading to the accumulation of damage that ultimately manifests as aging.
So do you just take it, or do you need to do some measurements before to see how your personal NAD level is? Or?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to point out is you can't take pure NAD. So contrary to what a lot of people are saying all over social media and things like that, NAD is a very unstable molecule. Okay. If you put it in a pill and try to swallow it, there will be 0 NAD left by the time it goes in. So what the best way to try and do is, your body's naturally very good at producing NAD. Mm-hmm. It's been found that the reason NAD goes down is because the natural pathways that produce it seem to get turned down with age. Again, probably an evolutionary thing. So the best way to actually boost NAD levels is to turn back on your cell's natural NAD production. And yes, supplements can be used to do that.
What else?
Natural things, some things that we're doing anyway are proven to boost NAD. So things like exercise, fasting, they are, a lot of the benefits are now known to be because they naturally increase NAD levels. So the reason that the way that they work is, if you think of fasting and also exercise, they cause in your cells a bit of an energy crisis, a bit of an energy deficit. It's like a stressor. Yeah. And what happens in the cells is the cells go, oh my goodness, we've got no energy coming, or we're using loads of energy. We need to go into protection mode, because again, from evolutionary standpoint, we need to protect those cells. So they switch on a load of genes and pathways that are telling the cell to conserve, to protect, to recycle, and to basically look after what it's got, because the cell doesn't know when its next energy is coming from, when its next meal or whatever. So one of the key pathways that exercise and fasting switch on is NAD production.
Okay.
Switch on a key enzyme that makes NAD. And you see NAD levels go up. That means your mitochondria, which are the energy powerhouses of the cells, they can increase energy production to survive the stress. You see recycling pathways in the cell get switched on, getting rid of any damaged proteins and replacing them with new proteins. You see repair get turned up. A whole host of different things that are almost counteracting those hallmarks of aging. So that is why, it sounds boring, but exercising, fasting, things we've heard of many, many times, are actually some of the best things you can do for longevity.
What else? Let's assume I'm your client. I'm sitting here and I'm asking you for help. I want to start living like this. I want to take supplements. I want to do my best to get older. What would you recommend me?
So I think the first thing I always say to people is really get to understand your own biology, because so many people really don't understand the fact that we are all individual. A top question that I get is, what do I do? What supplements do I take? And I'm like, no, don't do what I do, because I'm me and I'm genetically very different to you. And what I find really good is that over the last couple of years, there have been a huge amount of testing facilities that are now available to consumers.
Okay.
Like DNA testing kits, blood testing kits, where they can look at their own biology and be recommended, what things do I need to be doing just to keep my base level health in order? Because there's no point spending a lot of money on trying to, take all sorts of different longevity protocols and drugs and this and that if your general health is not up to scratch. So my first port of call is just get the basics sorted and understand for your own biology what your normal levels of things are. Because again, if we go to the doctor when we're sick, our level of something has changed, but then we're compared to an average population. You can get your bloods back and the doctor goes, well, you're fine. It's within range. And you're like, but I feel terrible. Something's not right. So understanding your biology, understanding what all your blood biomarkers are when you are fit and well, I think is number one. Because what you're aspiring to do is to keep them that way.
Yeah.
And so that's your hormones, general markers of inflammation, kidney, liver, all the usual things, a full blood panel. So that's the first thing. Once you've got that in order, then it's about how you maintain that. So again, the first thing I always say is the basics. Again, exercise, fasting. So we know that doing a mixture of both endurance exercise, but nothing crazy like ultra marathon running or anything like that, which contributes to inflammation, but having some sort of endurance in there for your cardiovascular health. But then also very important and often neglected is resistance training. We know as you get older, a lot of the issues caused are through frailty and loss of muscle. So maintaining muscle mass again is very important. And then I think after that, it's starting to look at, investing more money in what is going to give you that edge. And that's when you start looking at the things like maybe NAD, maybe looking at senolytic supplements, drugs when they're a bit more known and safe and, don't have those sort of side effects. So yeah, I think it's kind of a stepped approach. I think people always expect me to say some magic pill or
absolutely.
go and drink some youthful blood or something like that. But I think that there, which people do, they don't drink it. But there's a huge amount of people in the US that take infusions of young blood or youthful plasma. Or because that's been found that the blood of an old person and a young person is very different.
This guy Brian Johnson who invested like $2 million per year for his. But I recently saw him on a podcast with Stephen Bartlett, and he went through all this, and he goes to bed at 8:00, and I was thinking, what is life fun anymore then? And he asked this question: are you happy? He responded that he is happy, but I wouldn't be happy eating only black chocolate for the morning with some mushrooms and no alcohol and no hanky-panky, nothing. It's like it's
Yeah.
very dry. It's nothing happening really. If he's meeting with friends, they all have to cope with him and have to start at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
because he has to go to bed at 8. So I mean, that to what extent do you want to go? And that we always, it's often discussion. That if you're having a party or drinking or living not very healthy, and you have this discussion with your friends. Most would say, well, listen, if I'm living 5 years younger than expected, but still can have these good days and parties and traveling, well, I'll take that, right? So it's always some kind of balance between.
Agreed. So I did see that podcast. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a very extreme case of what we'd call biohacking.
Yeah.
So this is basically understanding and optimizing your own biology to be the absolute, best version that you can be. But like you said, it wouldn't be my cup of tea.
No.
Certainly not. But what he is doing is, I guess he's being a pioneer and using himself as an N=1 experiment of what is possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's very hard to conduct clinical trials and studies into this type of work, because how do you measure longevity?
Yeah.
But luckily we do now have other ways you can measure kind of how well you're aging.
Yeah.
By looking at something called biological age.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst you have your chronological age, which is, the age according to your birth certificate, you've got biological age, which is the age at which your cells are actually functioning inside. So I could take a blood sample from you and I could look at your cells and go, okay, you may be 50, but your biological age is actually 60, or it may be like 40. And that'll show whether on the inside you are actually aging better or worse compared to typically where you should be at your age. And believe me, there is nothing more incentivizing to anybody to change something in their life than showing them that their biological age is 10 or 20 years. Made a big difference. So I'm going to keep doing that, because up until this point, I think a lot of people are kind of like, well, I'm doing it, but is it doing anything? Like, how am I going to know if I'm going to live longer or healthier? Like, it's a hard thing to measure. So biological age testing has become, quite a tool to be able to show people. And I think going back to skin, I've recently been involved in a trial where it's getting developed for skin aging. So where you can just take a non-invasive swab of someone's skin, maybe they come into clinic, it's their first consultation, and say, okay, I'm going to do your skin age. And we're going to not only look at the pictures, but look at actually inside the cell, like what's going on, and be able to report to them as they're doing different treatments, is this going backwards? And it's just another way to demonstrate that some of the treatments that are being used are not only affecting the surface, but are actually fundamentally improving the health of the skin, and therefore obviously likely to have much more longer term benefits to the patient.
Let's talk about skin and food. Many people have this belief that food or healthy food will do something for their skin. Is there any proven research on that? I haven't found anything. And or these collagen shots, or broccoli is good for your skin, or if you suffer from acne, you should stop eating chocolate. And what is your opinion? Is there anything I can do with food for my skin? And is there any proven results? I always say I don't know any research. It's hard to set up research cases for these kind of trials, right?
Yeah, I mean, my background was in drug development and clinical trials, and trying to set up some sort of clinical trial to look at a specific food or a way of eating is very, very hard.
Yeah.
Because how do you control for
Yeah.
it? It's so difficult. So I don't think there is any specific research looking at, for example, chocolate and acne or, you know, a different type of food in a skin condition.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that the gut microbiome is controlled a lot by what you eat. Okay. So in general, if you have a diet that's not very diverse, you know, you're eating what would refer to as a beige diet, then you have a poor diversity of your gut microbiome. If you eat lots of different plants, if you're eating lots of different meat, like a very varied diet, you have a much more diverse microbiome. And what we know is that a more diverse microbiome actually influences the whole body.
Okay.
And it does that through inflammatory factors. So if you have dysbiosis in the gut, you generally become more inflamed across your whole body. A gut microbiome dysfunction has been shown to actually influence cognitive function, the skin. So your diet through your gut microbiome actually does play a big role in the health of the rest of your body. And actually, one of the hallmarks of aging is dysbiosis. So a poor gut microbiome is being found to be so important in regulating aging, which that's, you know, very new research. But it's very strong evidence to show that it does have an effect.
So your general recommendation is eat a colorful plate with fruits and vegetables or whatever from all kinds of color, like a rainbow, and then have like some kind of protein resource. Is it fish, meat, or tofu, or whatever? Would that be some kind of
exactly
okay?
So the recommendation would be to aim to eat 30 different types of plants.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a lot, but actually, if you have a salad with a couple of different types of salad leaves in, you know, and then put some seeds on top of it, or eat different nuts, or, you know, vegetables, fruit, you can quite easily rack up 30 different plants. Spices, herbs, they all count. And interestingly, what there has been a study on is your intake of how diverse your diet is and biological age. So what's been found is that if you have a poor biological age, you can actually reverse it simply by changing your diet. And I guess the reason for this is that plants especially are full of I always say wonder drugs. They're full of phytochemicals. They're full of loads of different nutrients that act to change our DNA. They've got so many compounds in them that are incredibly promising and incredibly beneficial to health. So my background was working in drug development, and what we would do is we would send huge panels of different molecules off to the lab to be tested. And quite often when we would get the results back, the top 10 things would be natural molecules. There would be things like curcumin from turmeric. There would be something called EGCG from green tea. All things that are very common and well known, and they would work way better than any drugs that we were testing. So for me, that was really eye-opening. And it's a shame because those molecules in plants don't get the research that they deserve, even though we know that they work really well, because no one can patent and own them. Therefore, commercially, no one's going to invest 100 million into developing something that someone can go to the greengrocer and buy in a stick of, you know, turmeric. But I always say to people, you have to remember, you know, again, as a societal thing, we're programmed to think only a drug can do something, but actually your body has no idea what is a drug, what is a nutrient, what is air, what is water. They're all molecules and they all have equally powerful physiological effects. And again, this is why I left the drugs world, because I was like, hang on, there's things that work way better than drugs, and I've seen it. So people shouldn't underestimate the power of food.
Cool. Amazing. So we talked about the hallmarks of aging, and I think we named 5 or 6 so far. Which are the missing ones?
Oh, you want all of them?
I want.
Oh, having a full science lesson. Okay. So first of all, we've got DNA damage. So we've covered that. The second one is something called telomere shortening. So that is linked to DNA damage. Okay. So the telomeres are the chromosomes in our cell that hold all the genetic material. On the ends, they have these little caps, which are called the telomeres. And people often describe them as a bit like the little plastic bit on the end of your shoelace. to prevent it from fraying. Well, this is exactly what a telomere does on your DNA.
Okay.
Now, every time your cells are dividing, for example, these skin cells, these telomeres get a little bit shorter
Okay.
time.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be built up and maintained, but as we get older, they don't. And they go shorter and shorter and shorter to the point where there's no little cap left. And when this happens, that triggers the cell to stop dividing. And it's like, this cell can't divide anymore. That's the end of its life. And that triggers senescence. So that other hallmark that we actually mentioned. So that you can kind of see how they're all sort of linked. So they're not standalone either. They're all linked. You know, one's kind of leading to the other. Another hallmark is something called autophagy. So this is basically cellular recycling. So again, when we're young, you kind of have to think of the cell as a factory. All of these things, think of the cell as a factory. So when we're young, our cell is very good at having, you know, cleanup process, something going round, getting rid of all the waste, getting rid of all the junk, making sure that it's recycled, making sure it's not building up in the cell. Again, what we see as we get older is that this process of autophagy, the cellular recycling, gets turned down. And you get an accumulation of literally cellular junk. And again, you just think of when a factory is old and it's breaking down and there's pollution and things leaking out. That's not good. And that's exactly what is happening in our cells. Another hallmark is altered nutrient sensing. So we touched on this a bit earlier when we were talking about NAD. This is the idea that our cells are very, very sensitive to what nutrients or energy is coming in or what, you know, isn't coming in. Again, an evolutionary thing for our bodies and us at a cellular level to be able to sense our environment. Like, does the body need to be wasteful or does it need to be conservative? And these nutrient sensors in our cells, again, seem to get turned off as we get older. And this is one of the reasons why as we get older, you know, we get the middle-age spread and our metabolism seems to decline because our bodies just aren't as good at sensing whether they need to conserve or be, you know, whether they don't need to conserve energy. So that's another specific thing that seems to change. We've got something called proteostasis. So we're getting quite in depth now. But proteostasis is, you know, a lot of things within our cells are made out of protein. You know, to take the skin, you know, we've got all the collagen, the elastin. Our cells are constantly, again, like little factories churning out all these different proteins, enzymes. And there has to be some sort of process in our cell to make sure that any things that don't come out quite right are actually dealt with. You know, how would you call it, like a quality assurance process is proteostasis. So every single protein that's made in the cell goes through a check to make sure it's the right shape and it's not misfolded. And then it's like, okay, tick, off you go. And that quality assurance process breaks down. So for example, things like Alzheimer's, you see an accumulation of like damaged proteins in the brains of these patients. And that's thought to be a big contributor towards that cognitive decline, because that simple cellular quality checking process has broken down. So again, it's looking at ways, is there ways we can switch this back on? And by the way, fasting is one of the best things you can do to switch on autophagy and proteostasis.
And what do you mean with fasting? The 16 hours fasting and then 8 hours eating, or different types of?
Yeah, different types. So
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. There are different benefits to different types, but in general, we as humans are not designed. Again, going back to evolution, we're not designed to eat the way we eat today.
Okay.
We are eating. We're told to get up and make sure we have our breakfast.
Yeah.
Then we've got to have a snack, and then we've got to have lunch, and then we have another snack, and then we have an afternoon, and we're not designed for that. We are designed to have some food that we've gone and hunted or gathered, and then not have anything for a good period, and then have to go back out and find some more food. Yeah. So again, all of these amazing cellular repair systems that we have in our bodies are just turned down. When our body thinks that there's plentiful resources and there's plentiful energy and nutrients, they just simply don't get activated.
Okay.
So if you are fasting, so any period where you're going for at least 12 hours, especially in women it's shorter, 12 hours with no food, actually is a trigger point for our cells to go, okay, we need to switch on those repair pathways. We need to switch on recycling. If we're eating every, 4 hours, that never gets activated.
Okay.
Even though it's sitting inside our cells, they're ready to go. It just never gets activated. So for women, probably a fasting window is like 12 hours.
Okay.
And that's really easy. That's, have your last meal by 8 p.m. Don't have your breakfast till 8 in the morning.
No
it's
problem.
Really achievable. Men more, the argument is more towards 16 hours that they would need to do it. Some women do go up to 16 hours. It's just some of the research lately shows it could be less for women. And then one thing that I recommend is, maybe once a month or even once every couple of months, doing an extended fast. So that's like 24 hours, water only. And when you're going up to like a 24-hour fast, that's when the magic really starts to happen.
Okay.
And again, it's showing that you can get just as much benefit by doing just an extended fast once every month or a couple of months as you do by trying to implement it every day.
Yeah.
So again, it's, you don't want to end up like Brian Johnson where you can't eat after 4 p.m. or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you can never go out to
11 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, 11, that's even worse. So there are ways to try and incorporate into your life without it becoming a burden, because at the end of the day, we want to live a longer, healthier life and actually enjoy it.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Are there like 5 takeaways for our listeners, what they can do to address these 12 hallmarks? So we are already fasting, good food. Yeah. With good food, we mean various food, a lot of colored plants and green tea probably.
Yeah. So I think, exercise, fasting, key things, understand your biology. I think it's really important.
But they have to go to the lab and get blood.
No, but you can do these at-home testing kits. You can order them and send it away, and you get a big report of
And that's good. That's not gimmicks. That's good.
No, so absolutely, really, really good quality DNA testing.
I can go to the pharmacy and get these packages.
Not the pharmacy.
You need it.
Aren't quite that advanced, but order online. There's companies that do this routinely now.
Can you recommend one?
Yeah, so there's one that I would use in the UK called Omnos.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they.
We put that in the caption.
Yeah, I don't know if they're available here, and that's in the UK. What I would use, there's different companies and different ones in the US and Europe.
Yeah.
And then for blood testing in the UK, I use one called Thriver that do all the basic things that and again you have to pay for it, but it's not in it. It's not totally out of the question, and it's a finger prick blood test, and within 2 days, and you can track, so you can see how your levels are changing, so you can very quickly notice if anything's starting to go up or down where it shouldn't be. So I think they're the kind of basics. Then I think as you mentioned, the diet, don't underestimate the power of some of the phytochemicals that are actually in plant-based foods. I'm not saying go vegan, but just make sure you incorporate more plants into your diet. And then when it comes to when it comes to aging, NAD is one of the only things so far that has been found to actually cover all of the hallmarks of aging.
Okay.
So it's the only thing that is being clinically and scientifically proven to actually make a real difference at the cellular level to every single hallmark. So when people talk to me about supplements and, collagen and things like that, I'm like, if there's one thing you're going to invest in a good NAD supplement, because it doesn't matter who you are, what your gender is, what your age is, you can guarantee it has declined.
Yeah.
Even by age 20, it is halved.
Okay.
So by the time you're 40, your half that you had at age 20 is halved again.
Yeah.
So that's quite an exponential decline. So it's so important in cellular health that you will feel a benefit just by that one thing. Whereas a lot of people are blindly taking a lot of other different supplements, not knowing whether they need them, whether they're deficient in them, or they're getting them from the diet. Yeah.
Good. So we were talking about fasting, good food, exercising. What else? Avoiding sugar.
Yeah. Sugar's incredibly pro-aging. And so, when we start going in a little bit more into biohacking, something that I have done quite a few times now is actually wear a continuous glucose monitor. So usually these would be reserved for people with diabetes. It's just a little thing that goes on the back of your arm, a little sensor. You can buy them relatively cheaply. And people go, well, why are you wearing a sensor when you are not diabetic? That's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, do it once in your life, even if you're not diabetic, because you will be shocked at what is going on inside of your body every time you eat something. Because when you are eating things like carbohydrates, even, not typically things you think of as like terrible sugar, but like say a banana or, a piece of bread, your body is working like overtime, like trying to regulate your sugar level, and you get a huge spike. And then it drops right down and it crashes. And by no coincidence, you're then, oh, I'm starving again. And then you're like, oh, well, that's why I've got to eat every 4 hours. And everyone's telling us to have granola and cereal for breakfast.
Absolutely.
Ooh, you're on a roller coaster. And we know that, first of all, type 2 diabetes is something that a lot of older people are now suffering, and that is something that's completely preventable. If you can learn to control your glucose spikes, it's where your body's becoming less tolerant of insulin, because basically every time you're eating something with sugar in, your blood sugar's going up, your body's going, oh my goodness, need to get the sugar out of the blood, and so it secretes insulin to help your body take it up. And then it crashes right back down, then you eat again, and then it's, the insulin's back out, and it's trying to get rid of it again. And what we know is that our bodies just tend to not be able to do this as well as we get older. This means excess sugar starts to be left in the blood, and sugar is quite reactive with protein. So if you think of our blood vessels and our skin and everything that's made of protein, you get this glycation issue where the sugar sticks to the proteins and it bends them and it twists them and it makes them stiff. And then you get stiff arteries, which can cause a lot of cardiovascular problems. You get loss of elasticity and, the wrinkling in the skin because of glycation, glycated collagen and elastin.
What about
sugar?
What about carnosine, which is pretend to break up these glycation? Is it more fairy tale, or is this?
So there's been a lot of research into what can get rid of these, what we call advanced glycation end products, or AGEs they're called. And there's been no research that I've seen so far that's convincing that it's possible. I think when something does come out that's proven to get rid of glycation, that will be a big thing. That will be a big thing, because glycation is involved in so many different age-related diseases that if there was a simple thing like an enzyme you could take that broke it down, it would be a game changer. But as of yet, there's nothing. We're aware that it's a problem. So, as with anything in longevity, this is a new industry. So a lot of the advice that I give at the minute is like, these things are coming. They're going to completely change the way we age. It's going to be hugely impactful on how we think about how we live our lives in terms of aging, but they're not quite there yet, a lot of them. So do everything that you can in the meantime to stay in good health for when these things arrive.
I want to come back to the 12 fault marks and what you can do. We missed on sleep.
Oh,
how important is sleep?
Very important. So I usually wear an Oura ring.
Me too. And I'm only 66 tonight. I'm not, so it's not perfect.
Yeah. So sleep is a huge area that is underestimated when it comes to longevity.
What was your number tonight?
My number was pretty poor as well. Hotel room. So I was on the 69.
Okay. 3 above me.
Yeah. So not good. Usually hoping to be in the high 80s. I would be.
And then you get this crown.
So again, for people that don't understand what we're talking about, the Oura ring it's a advanced way of tracking sleep. So for a long time, people have had smartwatches that track movement, and they say that's whether you've had a good or a bad sleep. That's not accurate. Something like an Oura ring tracks heart rate variability, which is actually the sign of how good the quality of your sleep is.
Yeah, we just discussed it. We have these two main players. There's sympathicus and parasympathicus, right? And if they in a good balance, your heart, the breaks between your heart beats are not the same, right? They vary, and that's good.
That's good.
And that means you have a high like 50 or 60 or even more, and that means that's a good sign. I'm currently at 10, so that seems like the sympathicus is hitting me strong.
Switching off.
Yeah, I'm not switching off.
Yeah. So your sympathetic is like your get up and go side of your nervous system. Your parasympathetic is the relax, rest, repair. So when you're asleep, you want your sympathetic to be switched off effectively and your parasympathetic to be turned right up. And like you say, when it goes in that direction, instead of your heart beating like a rhythmic drum, like doing, it becomes irregular. And although you think, oh, irregular heartbeat, that doesn't sound good. Actually, when you're asleep, that is exactly what you want. You don't want it to be regular. And that's a good measure of if you're in the parasympathetic state.
Yeah.
So that's important because we know that circadian rhythm, which is the 24-hour sleep-wake cycle that we have, is so important when it comes to longevity. So basically, if you looked at a 24-hour period, not only, through the light and dark, not only are we awake and sleeping, but during those different phases, it's estimated that I think it's around 20,000 different genes change.
Yeah.
So get switched on or off. So our whole biology completely changes between the day and the night. And that's important because it changes for a reason. When you're asleep and you're getting good quality restorative sleep, you see, especially things to do with cognitive function, the lymphatic drainage of toxins and build up of things from the brain is increased. You see that if you looked at a cell and it's changing the genes that it expresses, a lot of repair genes start to get switched on. It's like, again, thinking of the cell as a factory, it's like the night shift cleaners and everything have come in to prepare the factory all again for the day shift to start going. That all happens on that 24-hour cycle. So if we aren't getting that not only quality sleep, but a good sleep routine where your body kind of knows when it's going to expect it, you see that a suppression of the circadian rhythm. And actually what's really, really interesting is when you see the circadian rhythm that gets repressed, NAD goes down.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have a good, strong circadian rhythm, you have good levels of NAD at the right times to switch on all that repair. When your circadian rhythm becomes out of whack, for example, in people that are jet lagged, in shift workers, that circadian rhythm's really flattened, NAD goes down. So again, I think you're probably learning that everything seems to be interlinked. Yeah. And there's a couple of key players like NAD that seem to be controlling a lot of what the issues are.
So I have to work on that. Definitely. I had the feeling I'm just this type of guy, who's always under fire. And that might be the truth to a certain extent, but it probably will not be healthy the long term.
Yeah.
I probably could talk with you for hours, and now we have time tonight or tomorrow to keep on going because I'm so much interested in this. One few last questions. What do you think is the future of healthcare, aesthetics, and longevity or regenerative medicine? Doesn't it make sense that these fields grow together and that it's not only that healthcare is not only about healing diseases and doing surgeries, that a big part of it is also how to do regenerative medicine, how to prevent diseases? Would be much easier for everyone if we can prevent cancer, if we could prevent heart attacks and stuff like this. What do you think about it? Shouldn't that be integrated into the regular healthcare system much more?
Yeah, and this is exactly how I got into it all. So originally I used to work in cancer therapy.
Yeah.
And one day the drugs company that I worked in, they said to me, Nichola, we're moving you onto a different project. You're going to look at aging. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, in what sense? Like, they were like, drugs to slow aging. And I was like, right, that sounds very far-fetched. But actually, you know, there's been a huge shift in thinking, because if you look at every single disease that we're suffering, whether that's cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, cardiovascular disease, all the big things that drugs companies are trying to cure, the biggest risk factor is your age.
Yeah.
So getting older is the worst thing you can do for your health above anything else that we're told not to do. And so there was a big shift, and it was like, okay, we're working all in independent research groups here, where we've got one group totally focused on cancer, one group totally focused on Alzheimer's, and it's not really working. You know, we get rid of cancer. Actually, it's estimated we're only going to add a couple of years of extra healthy life. We've still got people with dementia and all sorts of other debilitating diseases. So technically, if aging is the root cause, then all of these diseases are like symptoms of aging. So why don't we reframe this and go, actually, is aging the disease? And that's been quite controversial, but actually there's a huge push towards this. And if we classify aging as something that we're trying to treat, if we can slow aging even just a little bit at the cellular level, then can we impact all of these other diseases in one go? And the answer is, from the research so far, is yes. Or impacting cellular aging improves healthspan, which reduces the onset of all of the diseases that all of our healthcare, systems are ultimately struggling with. So there's a big push towards that. Now, for me personally, you know, my passion is, how do we get this science out of these academic labs and out to people? You know, so, you know, for example, when it comes to aesthetics, I see this huge opportunity for you guys in this field to take all of this science. So my passion over the last couple of years is to really understand the aesthetics field and think, right, I know what you guys are doing. I know what's going on there. How can we merge this together? How can we take some of that science and bring it into the aesthetics field in the form of regenerative medicine? Because I truly believe in the future, what you're practicing as aesthetics medicine today in terms of aging, in any case, is going to be completely different in 10 years' time.
And that's my last question. How would it look like then in 10 years or 20 years?
Yeah.
Are we doing it from the inside only? Do we inject Botox fillers? Do we have lasers? What is your thought?
Yeah, I think that in the future, a lot of the things that you're doing today will not be done anymore.
Okay.
Because I think we'll be really focusing on fixing aging on the inside.
Yeah.
Because if you look at a young person, they have no wrinkles, they have perfect skin. You know, they fall over and injure themselves, cut themselves, it heals straight away, scarred. You know, our body has the built-in capacity to do that. And the key game changer is that we know it doesn't disappear. It just gets turned down. So I think in the future, we'll be administering, whether it's, topicals, injectables, whatever that is, but it'll be with a lot more cellular regenerative factors that are actually doing things to switch different genes on in our cells that are, boosting up collagen production. You know, there'll be no need to take collagen and, orally and hope it gets in the skin somehow. This will be like, we'll give you this injection or whatever it may be, and this is going to switch back on your fibroblasts to produce collagen. And I think that is going to be the way things are done in the future. And I always have to remind myself that I've lived in this world for 10 years and I've seen in the lab what is actually possible. But believe me, some of the results that we've seen in the lab, if we can find a way to translate that into a treatment, it will be completely game changing.
Great. So I better have to check for a new job, right?
Not at all. It's just you're going to be, you're going to be not injecting something.
I'm prescribing.
Try and, for example, fill out a wrinkle. You're going to be putting something in there, so the body's going to do it itself.
Okay, good. Looking forward. Thank you again, Dr. Nichola Conlon.
great. Thank you, Felix.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Aesthetics and Biz podcast. Make sure to hit the subscription button and tune in soon again. Thank you.